Joe Biden pardoned Hunter Biden. There's no way your conservative friends aren't going to bring it up, so we're going to have a very honest discussion about it. How should we talk about nominees like Patel and Hegseth? We're going to get into that. Lots of folks are talking about what the Democrats did wrong or what we could have done differently, but Ravi and I want to talk about how aggressively we should approach an after-action review, as it were. Finally, there's a super important issue that no one is talking about, and that's whether the United States is going to continue its commitment to Afghans who served alongside folks like me after January. They served with folks like me a long time ago, but what's going to happen after January 20th is the question. Our friend Sean Vandiver, founder of Afghan Evac, rejoins the pod in the second half to give us the latest. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
All right, Jason. Well, I think anybody listening to this knows by now that President Biden gave a sweeping pardon to his son, Hunter Biden. Who should go first here?
Why don't we just listen to the clips first?
Well, okay. Schumer was asked about this. Here is his response.
Yes.
Well, do you agree with some of your Democratic colleagues who say that President Biden's pardon of Hunter Biden was wrong or unwise, puts personal interest ahead of duty?
I got nothing for you on that.
Can I follow up on that? Are you concerned with the lack of transparency, lack of honesty around Biden's decision to pardon?
As I said, I got nothing for you on that. Nope.
Yeah, that seems about right. What's the other clip?
Well, some of our California Democratic friends had a different approach to this. Let's go to this clip.
Now, regarding the Biden pardon, Mr. Schiff told USA Today it was a bad move. That precedent will almost certainly be abused by his successor, and he committed to not pardoning his son. He should have kept that. So I think it was a very ill-considered decision by President Biden. And Governor Gavin Newsom, long considered a loyal supporter of the president's, called the move understandable but disappointing, telling Politico, with everything the president and his family have been through, I completely understand the instinct to protect Hunter. But I took the president at his word. I'm disappointed and can't support the decision.
All right, so for the audience, before we started recording or streaming here, I said to Ravi, I'm super interested in your actual opinion. So we don't know each other's opinion, which is why Ravi a moment ago said, who wants to go first? Let me add one more other voice without a clip, which is frequent guest co-host on this show, Stephen Weber. Anybody who follows Stephen on social media knows that from the moment this news broke, Stephen has been very upset. I would say he's very angry at Joe Biden over this. So let's represent his view. My views on this are mixed, Ravi. I kind of have two different sides to this. But I bet you have an actual opinion that you're set in. So go.
Yeah, and I had to say, like, I hadn't been tracking too much what Biden had said about this over the course of the campaign. And so once I really dug in and really read what he had said previously and what his press secretary and everybody had reassured the public, I would say my view solidified. I think absent that promise, it would be more ambiguous, although I still think I'd have a lot of questions. But here are my thoughts. Number one, he repeatedly ruled out pardoning Hunter when he was running for president. His press secretary was very adamant about this. And he made this promise as a matter of principle that he would abide by the results of the justice system. And he had people like us get on our podcasts and talk about how he had appointed this independent Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to investigate these claims. And we use this as an example of how Biden and Democrats do things differently than Republicans. And then when he didn't like the outcome, we are where we are. And I think that this sense of just lying to the American public, which is what this seems like, is in line with the other memorable thing that the Biden administration has done over the past 6 to 9 months as it related to the election, which is how they handled his age. And I have a lot to say about that. And I think that is incredibly damaging and leaves the next generation of the party with a really tough legacy. And when you look at things like what Schumer's inability to even say anything about it, he just lacks credibility now. Like when he's supposed to be criticizing Trump, who will deserve a ton of criticism for the looming January 6 pardons and everything else to come, conservatives will understandably throw it in his face that he didn't have anything to say about Biden pardoning his son, which, though not equivalent, is something that I think deserves a comment from senior leader in the Senate. Two, that Biden's statement I didn't love. He says no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out because he's my son, and that is wrong. I think that's true of the firearm charge, which I've said on this podcast before, but it's not true of the taxes. So he failed to pay millions of dollars in taxes, which is a crime and is a crime that should be prosecuted. The third is that he has no sense of perspective. And I'll quote to you from Jonathan Chait in The Atlantic. He said, President Biden's complaint about the higher standard applied to his son reflects the perspective of myopic privilege. Crimes by family members of powerful public officials are far more damaging to public confidence than similar crimes by anonymous people. Holding them to account through strict enforcement of the law is good and correct. What the president fails to note in his self-pitying statement is that Hunter Biden for years engaged in legal but widely inappropriate behavior by running a business based on selling the perception of access to his father. The only commodity Hunter had to offer oligarchs in Ukraine, China, and elsewhere was the belief or hope that you could put in a good word for them or his dad. But Joe Biden's defense of Hunter's influence peddling by stressing its narrow legality merely serves to highlight the hypocrisy of his fatherly indulgence. The black letter of the law was a fence to protect Hunter from the consequences of his sleazy behavior, and when the law itself trapped him, he simply opened a door and walked through it, a door no average American could access, which gets to my final problem with this, which is that Biden hasn't done hardly any pardons or commutations for anybody else. We have 158,000 people in federal prison, most of them for nonviolent offenses. As of the Hunter pardon, Biden had only pardoned 26 people and granted commutations for 137. Now, a lot of these things accelerate towards the end of the presidency, but where's the urgency for those folks? And it's not going to be a ton of people we can expect. You know, Roosevelt, for example, he issued some form of clemency for almost 4,000 people by the end of his administration. And we're at, single digit, double digits, triple digits, maybe right now for Biden. So for all those reasons, I think this is a dark stain on the Democratic Party and this administration.
Well, you just made a great case. I ultimately come down, I think, in the same place as you, but I want to walk a little bit through the new journey I've gone on this. And before I get into that, I want to speak to something that I am sure a lot of people watching this right now are thinking, which is, but this doesn't even remotely compare to Kushner, etc. Yes, I think I can speak for both me and Ravi. We acknowledge that this level, this type, this brand of favoritism, nepotism, corruption, whatever you want to call it, does not rise to the level of even the first Trump administration or even what we've seen so far in the coming Trump administration. But that's not really how leaders are supposed to measure themselves. And so what we're talking about is, what is our standard of conduct absent the curve that you would grade on if you were comparing things to Trump? So let's keep that in mind. Let's acknowledge that. Now, I think if I had a time machine and an ability to advise Biden of the past, what I would say, because even though this hasn't been said by him, I think it is a concern of his. What I would say, I would go back in time and I would say, hey, instead of giving a blanket denial that you will pardon your son, why don't you couch it by saying, look, if somebody is on their way into this office who has expressly said that they want to retaliate against their political enemies, and they, if even if they're elected, if they will pledge that they're going to let the special prosecutor, the independent prosecutor, continue and not replace them and not order that additional charges be put on for political reasons, then I would never have any reason to consider a pardon. But so if I could go back in time and I were him, I would have given a disclaimer like that. Is that there is a scenario where I would consider that, but it's only where I fear that there's going to be abuse of power. Because even though that hasn't been said, I think that that's a concern for Biden, and reasonably so. And then I try to think about this as a dad. Now, granted, he committed that he wouldn't do this. And I was talking to Diana about this last night, and I was like, okay, even set aside from the tumultuous life that Hunter Biden has led, set all that aside for a second. The stuff that would cause you to feel like, oh, there's extenuating circumstances here and all that. If you are a parent and your child is headed to prison and you can do something to stop it, it is hard as a parent to imagine not doing that thing. Now, that said, you're the president and you said you weren't going to do this. And Adam Schiff is right that it does set a dangerous precedent. Now, do I think that Trump needs a dangerous precedent to do whatever he wants on pardons? No, but it certainly gets harder to hold other Republican presidents accountable afterwards, because we know that while everything that Trump does creates precedents that are concerning and that people can do it, there is a degree of Trump gets away with stuff that other politicians don't. And so every precedent that somebody like Biden sets, it makes it even easier for that to become a real precedent. So I come down in the same place that it was wrong, but I come down in that place with a high degree of sympathy and empathy for the decision to break his word.
I think about it a lot the way I think about the whole debate around Biden's age, which everything that Biden was doing was understandable from a human level, but I think inexcusable from the perspective of constituents and people who count on his leadership. And when we put people in these positions, the standard is different, right? Like, yes, I understand what he did as a father, but I could also understand if Trump pardoned his kids as a father
Right.
too,
Yeah.
right? But I would
Agreed.
criticize it just the same. And it would be another thing if Biden, and to be clear, anybody who's listening to this podcast knows that we have pointed out the incredible fabrications, exaggerations, ethical oversteps of Congress and other Republicans every step of the way of the Hunter Biden investigation. But we also said that they should let the actual justice system play out for him, because this is one of the things that happens when you're close to power or in power, is that there's a higher level of scrutiny for the same reasons that Chait pointed out. And as I think Chait put it well, which is there's a higher level of scrutiny. We all know that. And second is, when you screw things up like this, it has lasting consequences on public perceptions of the rule of law. And people listening to this could say, well, that's already gone. Well, then what are we doing? Then let's just not care at all. Right? Like, let's just say, okay, Trump's got the new standard. Let's just break laws. Let's cover our own people. Let's use prosecutors' offices to go after our political enemies, whether they committed crimes or not. That's not me. That's not you. That's not this podcast, right? There are probably some places you can go that are going to sing that song. I'm not ready to give up on any of that stuff yet. And I think he dealt a pretty serious blow here. And I know people are going to say this is pro-clutching. This is Democrats playing by a different set of rules. Yeah, I think we should play by a different set of rules, and they should play by our rules. We shouldn't play by their rules.
Mm-hmm. That's how you model the proper behavior. Another thing you said that I want to expound on that I think is a great point. He has so few pardons, and this is one, but I think of that more as we should normalize pardoning more people more often.
It used to happen more often.
Right.
It's slowed down during the sort of war on crime era. Obama was a little more aggressive than some others, but you look at FDR was like the high water mark. They used to issue thousands and thousands of pardons with a much smaller population of the U.S.
But even Obama, when he did it, he was doing it, and it was really de-emphasized. It would be toward the end of a term, it'd be whatever. And I got to say, this is a thing where, look, Trump issued a bunch of really corrupt pardons, all right?
Right.
But he wrapped them in a bunch of pardons that were, I think, political. He was doing things because he wanted Kardashian on his side and stuff like that. But he was doing pardons, and he wasn't exclusively doing them once the election had already happened. And so what I would like to see normalized is more of a rolling thing. I would just like it to be a normal thing to see a president pardon or commute a sentence, because instead of having it be something that's in the Justice Department that at the end of a term is brought to a president like, hey, there's no cost to it now. Do you want to pardon these people? It should just be something that's done in the regular course of business on a regular basis. And that would, I think, change the way people would look at this one, not to the point of not holding Biden accountable for it. But I think in general, your point is a good one, which is there's a lot of people in this country who are in federal prison who shouldn't be. And that we should expect a president to care about remedying that all the time.
You know, if he coupled this with a blanket pardon for anybody who's in prison for a nonviolent drug offense and who had no charges that were in any way related to a violent offense, right? Whether pled out or existing on their record. Like he did something like that, categorical, without like the White House vetting the politics of it all, and just said, we're just doing it, right? That would be messy. It would be politically costly. I would get on this podcast and I would cheer that on. Now, I doubt we're going to be there. If we are there, I'll be excited about it. But what's crazy and baffling to me is the political damage of this one pardon is about as equivalent as what he would get for that act that I just described, right? And now we've traded one person for what could have been a real game changer of a pardon. Now, he might decide to do both together. I have very little evidence that he will do that. I hope I'm wrong, and they should clarify that pretty immediately. And what he's also done is he's robbed the next generation of the party of the ability to point out Trump's more easy to describe indiscretions that are about to come, like pardoning violent January 6th offenders, which of course I think is much different than Hunter Biden, but it's going to make it really hard to make that argument. And so I don't know. It reminds me of something my mom told me during Thanksgiving, which she was considering unregistering as a Democrat, which I've been hearing from a lot of people in my life. And this was before the pardon. And I've heard since the pardon from a lot of loyal Democrats in my life who really don't know where to go. And I think this was like this. I think this with the age stuff and some of the stuff that people viewed within the Kamala campaign and just through the long record of our party over the past few years, people are getting really pissed. And this is where I now start to spread the blame out to people like Schumer, is like, these leaders really need to start understanding how dire the sentiment is amongst the rank and file Democrats, because I don't see urgency from a lot of these people. I see it from Gavin Newsom. I see it from Jared Polis. I see it from Schiff. These people understand what's going on the ground, but there are far too many leaders of our party who I think don't really understand how dramatic and negative the feelings are from people who've been loyal to this party.
Yeah. All right. Well, now that we've alienated a great deal of our very partisan audience, hey, folks, look, we're going to tell you what we actually think. You know, sometimes
look, there's no audience capture here. I get that a lot of people aren't going to agree with us on this, but look, part of the reason why I think we get into this mess, that some of these messes that we're in, is that we try to avoid these hard conversations. It doesn't mean we're right. It's just what we think. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Kash Patel and Hegseth as two examples of cabinet / senior administration appointees that, if you are going to pay attention to anything, these might be worth a gander. We'll be back.
Fall needs its own wardrobe full of comfortable and coordinating pieces for a layered look with perspective. You need warmth that's still extra breathable. That's why I'm so happy to introduce our next partner, Rhone. Seasons change, we change. It's time that men's closets change too. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and truly versatile set of products known to man. Rhone has premium pieces to elevate every occasion. We're talking about the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos, and blazers, all boosted with functional performance properties. Rhone's signature technical fabrics stretch in every direction, breathe, fight odor and the elements, and effortlessly work everywhere so you can stay calm and collected even when life takes unexpected turns. Treated with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology for more wears between washes, you'll be fresh and clean all day long. Rhone helps me stay looking good no matter the occasion. Whether I'm traveling for work or going out on the town with my wife, Rhone has me covered. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to rhone.com/majority and use promo code majority to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/majority and use code majority. It's time to embody your most confident self.
Forget everything you know about fasting. Prolon by L Nutra is the only patented fasting mimicking diet that combines the benefits of prolonged fasting with a science-backed nutrition plan so that you can hit your health and weight loss goals without actually having to give up all the food. Introducing Prolon, a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. Researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers, Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat. But Prolon isn't a diet. Prolon is science based on Nobel Prize winning discoveries in medicine, and this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program, snacks, soups, beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state, and it's unlike anything you've ever experienced. I did the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. Prolon really isn't like any other diet I've tried because it's not a diet. It's truly science. And it was so convenient. They sent me everything I needed all in one box. It was amazing. And it's no wonder why thousands of doctors now recommend Prolon to support healthy blood sugar and cardiovascular health. Right now, Prolon is offering Majority 54 listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/majority54. That's Prolon, PROLON, life.com/majority54 for the special offer. That's prolonlife.com/majority54.
Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized, chewable oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there are no uncomfortable doctor visits. Answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/majority. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
All right. Well, let's talk about Kash Patel. Let's situate this for our audience. Like we talked about how we want to cover the Trump administration or the coming Trump administration. And I think these two nominations are two examples of like how to spend your attention. Number one, as we'll talk about, Patel is uniquely threatening. I wouldn't say that most of Trump's nominees are stellar, but this is one that I think is particularly alarming for reasons we'll get into with Patel. And then the other with Hegseth is an interesting question because it kind of falls into the Matt Gaetz territory of may not last. So it's a question of like, how do you want to, like, how much time and attention do you want to bring to somebody when you have a limited role in helping to usher them out? But let's talk about Kash Patel first. So there is an FBI director. So this is unique. This is not like the other cabinet officials. And this FBI director is supposed to serve 10-year terms. Now, Trump has said that he wants to fire Christopher Wray, the existing FBI director, who Trump appointed himself, and he wants to install Kash Patel. Now, let's just play a clip of Kash Patel to give people a sense of what this young man is all about.
Donald Trump's bombastic pick to run the FBI.
The FBI's footprint has gotten so freaking big.
Already has some controversial ideas for overhauling the Bureau.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I'd take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops. You're cops. Go be cops.
In choosing Kash Patel to lead the law enforcement agency, Trump picked a loyal firebrand who has vowed to take on the so-called deep state, which Patel claims is made of journalists, big tech, elected leaders, and senior government bureaucrats.
And our biggest enemy against that truth is the deep state.
and we are on a mission to annihilate the deep state.
He's also shown a taste for retribution, including over false claims of 2020 election fraud.
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I mean, this is what happens when a street gang, wins an election. And here's look, I don't think Kash Patel is going to end up being the FBI director, because if I'm a Republican senator who has been anything other than 100% lockstep with Trump every moment of every day, then and I have an opportunity to not vote for the guy who is pledging to be the henchman who will deploy the FBI against anybody who Trump gets angry with, then I know that could happen to me at any moment. Like, if I'm Lindsey Graham, sure, I've played a good Trump loyalist the last several years, but I've also been on the receiving end of Trump's invective before, and I know that I'm always one step left or one step right from being back in the doghouse with Trump. And I have an opportunity to just say no to a guy who will execute on all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and say no to that.
I think I might be wrong about this. I think Graham actually formally supported Patel. I know Ted Cruz did. Grassley is really close to it. Mike Rounds in Indiana, I think, was most supportive of Ray. My sense is you got Collins and Murkowski, who, if we were betting, I would have bet that those two are probably not on board with this. You never know. I think it's going to be close, honestly. And it could also take the structure of Gates, right? Which is try the more extreme pick, and then whoever comes in after them, you've now moved the Overton window. So the next person to come in could be like Rich Grenell or one of these types of people.
Which is what we got with AG, with Bondi, you know? It's what I think we'll get to Hegseth in a minute, but yes, I do think that's where this is going. And I think, look, it makes the base very happy. You took a guy who's out there saying this kind of crazy stuff, and you're like, I tried to make him the head of the FBI. So I can understand doing that. The one saving grace, I think, to a Kash Patel being in charge of something like this is, look, there's nothing good about it if he actually becomes the FBI director. But I do think that it also has a little bit the vibes of the first Trump administration, when you had people who, in many cases, had, like, within the very close circle of Trump, people who had these very extreme views, but they didn't really have the ability to execute on those really extreme views because they didn't have the reps in government. They didn't really know what they were doing. Now, what's scary about a lot of this administration is across this administration, you don't have that. You have Stephen Miller, who didn't really know, where the bathrooms were in the first administration, but was super dangerous if he did know. He knows where they are now, so he's dangerous. But at Kash Patel, at a place like the FBI, there's nothing good about it. But what mitigates somewhat the bad is, I think his ability to actually execute on a lot of that change will be somewhat mitigated by the fact that he won't really know what he's doing for the first couple of years. That's my only saving grace to this. But I don't think he gets through. At least I hope not.
Well, I hope you're right. Let's quickly deal with Pete Hegseth, because by the time you even listen to this podcast, things could change. There's speculation today that he could be replaced by Ron DeSantis. And this comes as there is news that he was accused of sexual assault in 2017. There are reports that his drinking at Fox alarmed coworkers, and he was forced to resign from previous leadership positions over sexual and financial impropriety, as well as resurfaced video of him trashing Trump, which is probably the thing, if anything, that does him in with Trump. There is a long and interesting piece from Jane Mayer in the New Yorker, if you're so inclined to read it. My advice on this one is, this is a perfect example of the kind of pick that you might want to be asking yourself, like, how much of a rabbit hole you want to go down on this one, especially since it might not last very long. And it's probably a good example of why it's good to sort of toggle your news intake. That's my theory of Pete Hegseth. Like, I'm not sure how much of your neurons you should be devoting to the name Pete Hegseth and the person.
Yeah, look, Pete Hegseth is not going to be the Secretary of Defense. Kash Patel might be the FBI director, and I think when you talk about this administration, I think talking about the fact that that Kash Patel was nominated is like, look, it is scary that the guy nominated a henchman to run the FBI, because that's what he is, right? It's like a mob appointment. Now, with the Department of Defense pick, it's clear that Trump is not interested in things like military readiness, confronting our adversaries. When it comes to the military, what he thinks he's interested in is this imagined idea that wokeness is a huge epidemic within the military. And that's why it makes sense that if you're not going to get Hegseth, why he would say, oh, Ron DeSantis, because Ron DeSantis has two things going for him from Trump's perspective. One, he has been Mr. I'm against wokeness, I'm against any of this stuff, and he can count on the idea that Ron DeSantis will, try and make a lot of that stuff be put into place at DOD. But what he also has going for him is what Trump likes best in someone, which is he is a former rival who has bent a knee to Trump, and that's like.
Well, do you know the third element of this? I'm curious as to how in the weeds you are on this one.
No, what?
So, okay, with Rubio going to state, there's a Senate seat, right? Apparently, DeSantis doesn't want to fill that seat with Larry Trump.
That's a good point.
So,
yeah, interesting.
Get rid of DeSantis, basically put Rubio up after, sequence it perfectly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
that's where I think we're going. But I guess the point of it is when you talk to people about it, it's like all of this, none of this is about protecting America or fighting crime. This is about settling grievances that Trump has.
Right.
And
okay. We promised a discussion that I want to at least devote a little bit of time to before we get to the very important subject of Afghanistan. And this is the question of self-doubt versus confidence. The sort of question of the day is, are Democrats making a mistake in letting Trump claim a, quote, historic victory? Putting it another way, Trump lost in 2020, lost in 2022. He conducted no introspection. He doubled down and won in 2024. Is humility a loser's game, Jason?
No, I don't think so. I think that, look, when it comes up, you could say, look, it was a close race, but he won. I think that in 2 years and in 4 years, voters are not going to really remember what the margin was, but most importantly, voters do not care. They just don't care. If you look at the numbers, there's a certain percentage of people that voted for Biden in 2020 who voted for Trump in 2024, and making the case that there weren't that many of them actually is in no way persuasive to trying to get them back. What is going to be persuasive to getting them back is making policy arguments and trying to connect culturally in a way that we clearly haven't in the last few years. And so, look, in 2022, it didn't do Trump a lot of good to spend that election litigating what actually happened in the 2020 election. And I think it's important to learn a lesson from that.
Yeah, I generally agree with what you're saying, with one exception, which is I could be persuaded that the interpretation of this result could be a version of the way that the Republicans created a false narrative about the economy and immigration and all kinds of stuff towards the end of, and crime towards the end of this past campaign, where they basically convinced the American public of some trends that weren't true anymore, especially towards the end. And what I mean by this is that they keep repeating that this was like a historic ass kicking, and that, and basically creating this permission structure for everybody to be like, oh, everybody's with Trump now, right? Like if you ask people, be like, oh, the black vote is with Trump now, right? That's kind of how people are talking, where it's, more black voters are with Trump than before, but let's not pretend that that's what most black voters are doing now. It's still enough people that we should take it seriously. And so what I could be persuaded of is that our leaders, when Trump oversteps a line like, look, this guy won a pretty narrow victory and he's governing like he has 100% of the country, right? There's no concessions. There's no attempts to work with the other side. There's this obsession with humiliating his enemies, and he's over-interpreting this mandate. Something like that, probably put better, I'm willing to consider. And then I think on the second front, Bill Maher is like, losers look in the mirror. There's something to this, like, I just don't know what to do with that information, because I do think there are real changes that our party needs to make. So it's like, I don't know what it means to just be like Trump did in 2020 and just be like, I did nothing wrong. I actually won the election. Like I just don't think we could get away with that. Maybe there's some candidate out there who could have that kind of attitude. I don't know who that is at the moment, like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. I don't know. Like he's not even Democrat. So it's like,
and he can't run for president.
He can't run for president. Right.
I think what you're saying is right. I don't think that Trump actually got a lot of mileage out. I think it was only damaging to him that he denied the results of the election. And I think he won despite that, because I think people voted for other reasons. Right. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, authenticity is what usually wins people over. And so that's why I think the answer is like, this was a very close election. We lost it. But end of sentence. It's a very close election that we lost. And then, as he governs, I just don't think you need to reference the last election when you say like he's overplaying his hand. You just say like, this is not what people voted for. Right. Yeah. Like, because I think that that's true. A lot of people who voted for him did not vote for Kash Patel, a henchman, to be put in charge of the FBI. So I think that's how I would approach it.
I like that line. This is not what you voted for, because it's like it could go. It both applies to people like us who didn't vote for him, but also it applies to a lot of Trump voters. Probably, I would imagine, especially swing voters at the end. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how many of them are buying that there's a deep state conspiracy at the FBI.
No, I think those people mostly voted because eggs are expensive.
Right.
And I don't think that how you regard the last election is going to swing them one way or the other.
Right.
All right. So we're going to take one more short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Sean Vandiver about the most important issue that is not being talked about enough in terms of what happens with the next administration. Let's be honest. What most people really want for the holidays is to see their favorite people more often. That's why this year, the best gift you can give, besides plane tickets, is an Aura digital picture frame. Named the #1 digital photo frame by Wirecutter, Aura frames are incredibly smart and easy to use, allowing you to upload unlimited photos and videos directly from your phone to the frame. Plus, you can order the frame online and preload it with photos and videos using the Aura app, so it's ready to go right out of the box. We have one. We had fun with it by letting the kids select the photos, so we kind of all sat down as a family and picked the photos, and it was like a very nice, fun experience. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames by using promo code MAJORITY54 at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code MAJORITY54. This deal is exclusive to listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply. There are over 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States and millions more around the world. How do you know which ones can make the biggest impact with your donation? GiveWell was founded to help donors with that exact question. They pore over independent studies and charity data to help donors direct their funds to evidence-backed organizations that are saving and improving lives. GiveWell has now spent over 17 years researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found. Over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $2 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 200,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. You can find all of their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. If you've never used GiveWell to donate, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick podcast and enter Majority54 at checkout. Make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from Majority54 to get your donations matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more. Okay, probably many of the folks in our audience have caught since Sunday night, either on YouTube or caught it live, the 60 Minutes piece about my efforts and others to get a bunch of people out of Afghanistan a few years ago. If you haven't, I hope you'll go watch it, because I'm very proud of it, but also because I think it's really an important testament to the heroism and bravery of Afghan allies who have come to this country. We'll put the link to the YouTube version of the 60 Minutes piece in the show notes. But I say all that to say, like, people who have listened to this show for a long time know how passionate I am about this issue as an Afghanistan veteran. And so I wanted to bring on, again, I think for the second or third time we've had him on the show, Sean Vandiver. Sean is a Navy veteran. He's also a public affairs professional, and he is the founder of Afghan Evac, which brings together organizations with a shared commitment to fulfilling the United States duty to Afghan allies and friends. We'll bring Sean in here. Sean, I believe, are you at the White House right now?
No, actually, I just left the White House.
Okay.
I couldn't get them to give me internet. All of my pals are in Angola right now with the president.
Okay, fair. Well, look, I'm just going to give you a pretty open and broad question here to tee off on, which is, tell us a little bit about what the program looks like right now to pull Afghan allies out of Afghanistan and to bring them to the United States, and what's at stake as we head into the next administration.
Sure. So, look, most people don't know that there are still Afghans coming out of Afghanistan every day. Most people think that after August of 2021, we left everybody back there. We haven't brought anybody here since, except for efforts like what you did with the Raofi family and Operation Bella. But the truth is that thanks to this broad cross section of America that stood up, government, the Biden administration, the Blinken State Department has done extraordinary work, bringing thousands of Afghans here every month. What happens is they'll leave Afghanistan, they'll go to a third country, they'll do a little bit of processing, and they'll come here and join our communities. And this broad cross section of America that I talked about has helped bring reality from the ground to our political leaders and our executive branch leaders, as well as our congressional leaders. And it's all done under the umbrella of something called Enduring Welcome, which is the ongoing policy. And actually, just this last Monday, Secretary Blinken and Deputy Secretary of State Rich Verma convened about 300 of us in and out of government to say thank you for everything that we've done. Now, what's at stake is during the last Trump administration, there was an effective ban on refugees. We all remember what was, colloquially called the Muslim ban. And actually, that I was doing a press conference in January of 2017, and that's where I met the guy that I got involved to help, Lucky, who was here on Monday. And look, we're a lot of folks are really worried. But at Afghan Evac, we focus on reducing uncertainty, maintaining urgency, and increasing throughput. And that's what we're looking for from the incoming administration, right? We know that incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is an Afghan veteran himself, an Afghanistan veteran himself, and he cares deeply about this. In fact, he's written op-eds that have talked about how important it is to relocate our wartime allies. But we're not hearing a lot of public statements about this. And so what we're looking for, and what I hope all of your listeners and viewers will do, is call their members of Congress, call their friends in politics and say, hey, we need to know what's going to happen with our allies. We need to know that the next administration knows that wartime ally means refugees and special immigrant visa holders. It means all of these folks that stood up for the idea of democracy. And we built this successful infrastructure that's working now legally to bring folks here who have earned their right to be in our country. And we need to hear about it now.
Yeah, to provide even more context for folks. So, in the immediate aftermath of the August 31st withdrawal from Afghanistan, it was kind of the Wild West in terms of continuing to get people out. I mean, the airport in Kabul had just been blown up. There was a big turnover, would be a euphemism for what was going on in Afghanistan. And that's why you had these private efforts like mine to just do whatever they could to get people out. Because at that time, the Taliban was, and this is still the case, but very aggressively at that time, exacting retribution against people. Now, that is still absolutely a threat over there right now. Like, there are a lot of people who help the United States, who help the cause of democracy, who cannot leave their home, who are scared to death that the Taliban will exact retribution against them. The only difference is that now the Taliban has a lot of other crap going on too. So what that all equals out to is that it became sort of more official at some point several months after the evacuation, to where the United States deals mostly through Qatar, as we do with a lot of folks in that region, to sort of do that kind of diplomacy that does allow a certain number of our people who should be here to get out every month. And those people, many of them are on, like, thousands upon thousands are waiting on lists, waiting on the United States government to finish vetting processes and everything else, to be told, okay, now's the time to go. Now's the day to get on a plane and get out and get to safety with your family. Oftentimes that means with women who have no future otherwise in that country. And so what's very much at stake is not just whether the Trump administration will statutorily support continuing the program, but correct me if I'm wrong, whether they will lean into it, because there is a scary middle ground here, right?
That's exactly right. During the last administration, they slowed down SIV processing by layering on bureaucracy.
The last Trump administration.
The last Trump administration, that's accurate. And look, the Biden administration has fairly taken a lot of flack for how they executed in August of 2021. But look, what they've done since is this administration has processed more SIVs. This Biden administration has processed more SIVs, more visas for our wartime allies than all other administrations combined since 2009, since the law made it a thing. And yeah, look, since August of 2021, we've worked together to build out this infrastructure that has resulted in 183,000 Afghans coming here. And these are folks that, you know, they're coming into jobs like Uber drivers. Like if you ride in an Uber in the DC area, Sacramento area, San Diego, and several other areas around the country, chances are you're going to find an Afghan who came here. And look, the reality is that there's probably about 200,000 more folks that we need to get here, right? And I know there's like all this concern about the border and all this concern about immigration coming in, but the reality is you know, we were told in San Diego that there would be 20,000 people hitting the border every day. So 10 days at the border is what it would take to get all the Afghans here. Great. Do it. Bring them. Go ahead.
It's also important for people to know that these are some of the most industrious and resilient and impressive. Like, the people who will get here are the people who not only stood up and risked their lives for the United States during the war, and they were also the ones who were willing to do that and then got accepted into those jobs because they were the most capable, the most impressive. And then on top of that, they are then the ones who have had the courage to pop their head up and say, I'm going to risk everything in order to get out, which is a whole other level of industriousness and resilience. So while Sean is absolutely right that when you encounter these people, you're probably going to encounter them in jobs like Uber driver, bussing your table, that kind of thing. But if you give them 5 more years, you're going to encounter them in middle management positions. And if you give them a generation, you will encounter their children in positions where they are driving innovation in this country and doing all sorts of things. And so,
and it's not a function of them. It's not because of them that they're in these Uber driver jobs, right? These great jobs. It's because our cities and our states and our federal policies aren't, you know, accepting of a foreign degree or a foreign license.
A lot of these people were running governmental departments and things like that in Afghanistan.
For my Thanksgiving, I had the former education minister for the whole country and his family there. I mean, you encounter such remarkable people.
When we did Operation Bella, there was one main guy who he and I kind of co-drove the whole thing. And he's a Republican, you know, and we would laugh during the whole thing. Like when I'd be like, okay, I got to call the Clintons now. And he'd be like, whatever it takes, man, let's do it. And we joked about it the whole time. And what a lot of people who weren't part of that movement or part of the continued movement of Afghan evac don't know is that it is a truly bipartisan effort. And I say that to say, folks who are listening right now, as Sean says, call your members of Congress, tell them this is important to you. A lot of people will hear, call your Democratic members of Congress, because usually when we talk about issues on this show, it means call your Democratic members because they're probably the only ones that are going to listen to you on this. That is not the case on this issue. Call your member of Congress, no matter which party they are.
And look, we've got champions like Lindsey Graham and Jerry Moran, Joni Ernst. Look, this is a truly, truly bipartisan effort. Dusty Johnson has been incredible on this. Richard Hudson. Look, I could, I like to talk about the genesis of Afghan evac. Like when we stood up our operations center, it was me and Jack McCain, and we couldn't be more different, right? Like Jack is Republican royalty. I'm a Democratic nobody. Jack was an officer. I was enlisted. Jack was a helicopter pilot, and my job in the Navy was to shoot things out of the sky. We couldn't be more different, but we remain lockstep on this, right? I'm going to a McCain Institute event tomorrow, which before all this happened, I will tell you that probably wasn't in my cards. And like 90% of the American public support this effort. 75% of evangelical Trump supporters, according to a poll conducted just in February of this year. This issue and these people enjoy broad bipartisan support, and it's easy to understand why, right? 20 years of war, these folks stood with us, and they still remain loyal to us, even after it's taken us this long to get our shit together on this. And I got to say, that lack of clarity, I don't think it's a bad thing, right? I think a new administration is trying to stand up. They're trying to figure their shit out. We've gotten indications that they want to keep this going. I mean, President Trump did a much better job than President Biden did with regard to the Abbey-Gate families. He went and he sat with them in their pain. President Biden is the empathizer in chief, right? He's the empathy guy, except on this issue. And he didn't do a great job on that. But I'll tell you who did is President Trump sat with him for 6 hours, thanks to Representative Waltz, who's going to be his national security advisor. He went to the graveside of a few of the fallen on the anniversary on August 26th of this year. And look, politics aside, I think there are good indications that this will continue. We just need to hear it, and they're not going to talk about it if we don't demand it. They're not going to talk about it if the media doesn't cover it, and they're not going to talk about it if constituents aren't calling their members of Congress, especially Republican members of Congress. People want to do the right thing on this, but we got to make our voices heard.
All right. Well, Sean, thank you. Tell people where they can find Afghan evac,
sure,
and what to do when they get to the site.
Sure. So one big thing you can do is donate. I'm a volunteer. Everybody's a volunteer, but we need funding to support the mission. And we're running out of money. So afghanevac.org/donate. Please help. The other thing you can do, go to our website, look at the press, see what we're talking about, follow us on social media. We will be launching before the end of the week a sign-on letter that folks can sign on to say that they want to know what the next administration is going to do. And we hope that all of your listeners will sign on to that. And it will just make it be a pop-up on the website. And it will be all over our social media. So please, please, please do that. And talk to your friends about this. Tell your stories. Chances are you've encountered some of these folks and they've made a difference in your life. Tell that story. Tell it on social media. Talk to your local news. Whatever you can do. And keep the faith, and hopefully our country will continue to get this right.
Sean, thanks for doing this, and thanks for all the work you're doing, man. We're going to let you go, but thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. See you, bud. All right.
Oh, well, I popped into the comments on YouTube, and for all of you guys out there, I love you, even though I know that a lot of you aren't happy with us. I think we see a lot of things differently, but I hope that the service for those of you on YouTube who tune into us is that hopefully we're a little bit outside of the bubble for you. You might not love everything we're saying, but hopefully this is somewhere you can get some different perspective if you're seeking that. And obviously, if you're not, free country,
Yeah, we're on your side, YouTube viewers. We are on the same side as you. You just may not always get there the same way. Ravi is, of course, referring to Sean accurately saying that President Biden didn't spend a lot of time with the families of the Marines and the soldier who died at Abbey Gate, and Trump did. Now, you can accurately say, well, that was toward the end of the campaign. It may have been politics. Yeah, but it's still what happened. And let's also remember that Sean is saying that because what we need right now is for Trump to do the right thing. And one of the ways to make sure Trump, as we know, does the right thing sometimes tends to be to flatter him. And so
whatever it takes.
You got to respect what Sean is trying to do there.
And let me say that, having just monitored some of these comments, there are these comments about how it was really Trump who screwed up Afghanistan. and you're the expert on this, but let me posit, like, let me throw something out there on this. Trump did a lot wrong in Afghanistan. Biden did a lot wrong in Afghanistan. I'm sorry to say, like, a lot that really cost people lives. Like, and made the exit more chaotic than it should have been. I don't think he communicated properly each step of the way, his responsibility over it. I think never properly explained and apologized for it until way too late. But you're the expert, and I just think it's important. The Trump has a distorting effect on our dialogue. It's like he can't absolve us. This is related to the Hunter stuff. Trump bad doesn't mean everything we do is excusable, right? Or that acknowledging mistakes that we make is somehow beta, right? Like, we have to maintain our integrity. I'm sorry.
Well, look, Afghanistan was a 20-year war that spanned 4 presidential administrations, 2 from each party. It was a bipartisan failure. Now, there were things about Afghanistan, I'm speaking now to fellow Afghan vets, that were successes. The fact that we actually granted women for 20 years the opportunity to go to school, to get educated, to be in positions of influence and power, and we made Afghanistan better, no question, for 20 years, and that has a rippling effect across the world, and it will have a long-term effect, hopefully, in Afghanistan. But ultimately, we did not prevail in the war in Afghanistan, and ultimately the Taliban came back. And that failure can be assigned to all 4 presidents. There's no doubt about it. The successes that happened there can be assigned to all 4 presidents. But this thing where we want to have this binary world where we blame one or the other, it just doesn't work in an event that lasted 20 years, the longest in American history. That just doesn't work, and we have to get past that. So,
well, one for us, I really loved the 60 Minutes segment. I obviously knew a lot about it to begin with, but I thought they did such a great job pulling it all together, and I'm glad that I know there were like little, like the Casey Starr piece or whatever, like that came out, but it was so cool to see that fully out there in the world. Obviously, we've been talking about it offline for a long time. How has it been? I can only imagine the critical reception has been amazing.
Yeah, people are there's a lot of really nice sentiment that's come back our way. What is most gratifying to me is that people do seem to get, for me, what was the message of it, which is that just what Sean was saying, that these are fantastic people and they should be welcomed and they should be treasured in our country. And also, it's just been fun on a micro level to watch the way the Raufis have been received, because, when they understood they were going to be on 60 Minutes, but, if you haven't grown up in the United States, like, you don't have the cultural imprint of 60 Minutes. So, the experience they've had, like going to work the next day, or like when people found out it was going to be on 60 Minutes, they all work, all 3 of the men work at the same place. Just the way people have been coming up to them very excited. And so that's been really, really gratifying. But what's interesting, we had like a watch party here, the Kanders and the Raufis, to watch it.
You're toggling between the Bills game and the.
I was not. Although I did look back at some highlights later.
Oh my God, he threw a pass to himself.
That was crazy. I mean, I gotta say.
I was gonna make a joke to you while it was going on, but I was like, there's no way you're gonna even know what I'm talking about. So
no, definitely not. But it's funny when you see something, it's a 21-minute piece or whatever, and they did a great job. Like, there's nothing I would change, but you when you lived through it, as I did and as Raheem and everybody did, that 21 minutes goes by so fast when you watch it, and there's so much that they can't get to, and you realize there's nothing you would change, because in their position, you don't know how you would tell the story otherwise. But all I would say is the full story is about 1,000 times crazier than what's in the 60 Minutes piece, which is hard to imagine, but it is. So
I'm really hoping that we hear more about this story. I'll leave it at that. Like, I hope this.
I think we will. Yeah, I think we will.
Wow. Well, I can't. This is where we truly lose all listeners. But I think your team, just like another huge victory this week against the worst team in football. You keep squeaking it out against the Carolina Panthers, the Raiders, the Broncos. I mean, valiant valiant victories, where at the last minute, it's not like you guys are having great plays. It's like the other team just seems to slip and throw you the ball or something each time. It's really remarkable. It's inspiring stuff.
Can we talk about the excellent prank that I pulled on you regarding this?
Well, you want to know, I didn't
it.
want to rain on your parade, but when I watched the video, I legitimately thought it was some kind of highlight reel of your month or year. I just misunderstood what was going on. So I didn't read it until you said it was a prank as a prank. I thought it was like, because I know how much you love the Chiefs. I literally thought like you had mixed together your family highlights with the highlights of the Chiefs as like an actual video portraying things that you were joyful about.
Either
So I
way,
was just
mission
like, oh, yeah, that's
accomplished, because it forced you to just watch. Because for context, Ravi was texting myself and frequent guest co-host on the show, Stephen Weber, trolling us about the Chiefs just barely beating the Raiders and how lucky we are because we keep winning at the last second. And so I sent a video that my phone had legit created that morning, which was a little highlight reel of a Raufi, our Afghan family, a Raufi wedding. And it's like a 30-second video. And at the end of it, it just cuts to this Twitter video that some guy had made that is just highlights of the Chiefs winning on the last play of like 7 of their last 13 games. And I even had Steven, I was texting Steven separately. I was like, I don't think Ravi will actually watch it unless you come in and act like that's the craziest thing you've ever seen. So Steven comes in and he's like, whoa, I didn't know they partied like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually saw it and I was like, oh, this is like, this is just things that are great in his life right now. It's totally normal to me.
Well, that's fine too.
I think I'm going to the Lions game, by the way, because like Hodari and Suji, all these guys are from Detroit. So
I didn't know that.
So we're gonna go to that game. I've never been to
in Detroit,
Ford Field or whatever it's called. Yeah,
this is Bills Lions.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good game.
That's gonna be a great
couple weeks. Yeah, could be very important for you guys depending on how things turn out.
Yeah, we really need y'all to lose again.
We probably will lose that game. I mean, that's going to be a tough one. That Lions look a very serious team. The kind of team that gives us trouble. But
yeah. All right. Well, I will say this about the Chiefs. The Chiefs partisan in me will say, "Hey, look! At this time last year, we were in the doldrums and we were losing lots of games. This time this year, we're in the doldrums and we're just barely winning lots of games, which speaks well." But I will also express that I have the same anxiety about the Chiefs being able to make it the distance this year that I had last year, because they are just barely winning some of these games.
Let me give you my sense of things, which is there are just an incredible amount of scary teams out there that are bad matchups for my team and probably yours, which are the Steelers, who I was just watching the Hard Knocks on this last night, are just terrifying in the ways that give us problems, like strong defensive line, pass rush, like run game, etc. The same is true with the Ravens.
Seems to have started to figure things out again.
The Ravens, when they're playing really well, I think are really tough to beat. And then you look at the NFC, the two teams there, the Lions and the Eagles, are very good running the ball, which is our biggest problem, stopping the run. So I front like I'm very confident about my team. But I think it's going to be. I'm not. The Chiefs are not my worry right now. Yes, like that's going to be a tough game. We could lose that game. We've lost it, plenty of times. But I would much rather play you guys than some of those other teams. We couldn't lose or beat any of them. Like it's a very equal year, I think, when it comes to the top 5 to 6 teams in the NFL. Maybe even more. Like the Chargers, you guys are playing really well right now.
Mm-hmm. The Bills matchup against the Chiefs really, really well.
We match up better against you than we match up against some of the teams I just mentioned, for sure.
Yeah. And the Lions are, to me, the most scary. I mean, the NFC, so it's
we'll learn a lot about what's going on NFC versus AFC because we just saw the Eagles beat the Ravens, which was a little scary. And then if the Lions kick our butts, then I don't know, maybe we're just competing for the consolation prize.
That is a weird thing about the Bills, though, is that when, other than the playoffs, when you lose, you seem to just really lose. Like you don't do, and then when you win, you seem to, you know what I mean? Like the Chiefs haven't really blown anybody out in forever, but they just keep winning. And then when they lose, they tend to just barely lose. Whereas the Bills
Well, actually, until you guys, we had the shortest margin of loss average, I think, over the past 5 years or something like that. But I think you guys this year are like exceptionally like, well, I guess you're not losing. So, but like
we're just
we
barely
were
winning
losing
over
low, and I think we had gone the longest in recent memory with having one score losses, never losing by more than one score. But then I think the Ravens kicked our butts, and that was the end of that streak. So,
All right. Well, we should have a sports podcast, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, thank you. One thing we wanted to mention, Ravi, explain the Spotify thing.
If you have us, Spotify has the Spotify Wrapped thing where like they tell you like your year in review or whatever, and then you could post about it. My one request of you is if Majority 54 is on your Wrapped, post about it on your Instagram, tag us, we'll repost it for you.
And please leave a 5-star review, like we always ask. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.